Good morning. Namaskar. Welcome to the first session of MMPC 017 Advanced Strategic Management. Students, friends, last week we completed MMPC 012 Strategic Management, and this week we are commencing with a new course, MMPC 017 Advanced Strategic Management, and I am Dr. Siran Mukerji, Additional Director, IGNOU Regional Center, Noida. In this course also, we have four blocks: block one, two, three, and four. The first block is titled Introduction to Corporate Management. Second block is titled Corporate Level Growth Strategy. The third block is known as International Strategy. And the fourth block is titled as Strategic Enablers. So, we're going to discuss the first block, the introductory block today, and which is titled Introduction to Corporate Management. And in this block one, we are going to discuss corporate management, an overview and introduction, and also corporate policy. Well, what are the learning outcomes of MMPC 012? Learning outcomes of MMPC 017. I'm sorry. It is to understand the abilities and attitudes in strategic management. You would also be able to understand the corporate level growth strategies. Along with this, once you complete this course, MMPC 017, you would be able to understand the international strategies, including the strategic risk management at the international level, at the global level. You will understand the concept of knowledge management, and also, excuse me, you will also understand the role of innovation in strategic management. Now, let me tell you, in MMPC 017, we are talking of corporate management. So, we are talking of management at a very mega level. We are not talking of small single units or small strategic business units. We are not talking of small companies. We are not talking of micro entrepreneurs. We are talking of corporate management. So everything would be either at a national level, or we are talking of management of companies or group of companies. Corporate management means management of group of companies at the global level, at the multinational level. So as I told you, we're discussing the block one, Introduction to Corporate Management, and it has two units: Corporate Management and Introduction, and Corporate Policy, the second unit. Okay, now let's begin with the first unit, the Corporate Management and Overview. And in this, once we complete the first unit, once you are through with the first unit, you would be able to understand the following concepts. You obviously, we are talking of corporate management, so you would understand, you would be able to understand or have a better understanding of what corporate management is, that is meaning and definition of corporate management. Then you would also be able to have a better comprehension of nature and scope of corporate management. Then in corporate management, you will be able to understand the concept, nature, process, benefits, and prerequisites of corporate planning. Planning, as you know, is an integral part of management. So here we are not talking of planning per se, we are talking of corporate planning. Then you would also understand the importance of implementation and evaluation aspects of corporate plan. If in case some of you were with me or have already gone through MMPC 012 strategic management, you would recall that there we were talking of corporate planning process. We're talking of we're talking of planning, strategic planning process. And in strategic planning process, we had discussed the strategic planning, and in strategic planning process, strategic implementation, evaluation, and control were very important. So here also we're going to have an understanding of importance of implementation and evaluation aspects of corporate plan. Then there would be approaches to corporate management, which we are going to discuss. There are basically four approaches to corporate management. So that also we will be discussing here. Then we will discuss the role of various strategies in corporate management. Then we'll also try to assess what are the factors leading to the need of corporate management, and we will try to learn the differences in corporate management practices adopted by non-business organizations, non-profit organizations. So we move on with the first unit, that is corporate management and overview and introduction to corporate management. I told you that we are not talking of small organizations, we are not talking of small companies, we are not talking of micro level companies, we are not talking of medium level companies, we are talking of large, significantly large group of companies, the corporate groups, and thus it has a very wide and broad phenomenon covering lots of activities. So when we are talking of management, and that also we are talking of management at the corporate level, so we naturally, management, as you all know, it has the basic things that we had studied long time, that is, planning, organizing, staffing, directing, controlling. So all those activities are also come under the purview of corporate management. Only thing is the scale of operations. In case of small organizations, the scale of operations would be smaller, whereas in this case it will be at a very macro, or at a very mega level. So the scale of operations would be also very large. Now, it what are the dimensions of corporate management? It includes three dimensions, that is corporate planning, implementation of corporate plan, and as we all know, implement just planning and implementation is not enough. We also need to have adequate evaluation and control of the corporate plan implementation. Without adequate evaluation and control, we don't know whether we are moving in the right direction, and the organization would not know whether, one, whether it is moving in the right direction, and number two, whether finally the organizational objectives will be achieved or not. So therefore, corporate management would have three basic dimensions, that is corporate planning. It would be then also be involved in implementation of the plan, and once we are implementing, we would also do try to evaluate and control this plan process. Okay, what is the nature of corporate management? Well, when we talk of nature of corporate management, as I told just a few minutes back, it involves a lot of activities. A whole gamut of activities are involved in corporate management. Therefore, we can say it encompasses whole management process. So it begins with, sorry, excuse me. It begins with planning, it will go on to controlling, there will be also, since we are talking of whole management process, so planning, organizing, staffing, directing, evaluation and control, all these activities are part of the corporate management. And since we're talking of planning, so naturally it will be a development or formulation of corporate plan. So it begins with, obviously, we'll have to look into the various alternatives. It involves determination of future course of action based on our objectives, organizational objectives. Then, based on this alternatives that we have, we'll try to, how do we implement without resources? So we will mobilize the resources, will deploy the resources towards what? Towards achievement of the objectives. So, nature of corporate management is also known by the kind of alternatives that we are trying to determine, by the various course of actions that we need to follow. We need to also see the kind of resources we have, and not only kind of resources we have, and also deploy these resources. Now, corporate management, it could be short term, it is both short term as well as long term management. It is related to all the levels of management. Since we are talking of whole management process, so that means what? There are certain aspects, certain activities, certain functions which would be performed by the top management. That will be in their purview, and then implementation, evaluation and control would be obviously middle management, and implementation would be at the lower level management, that is the operational level. So it involves all the levels of management. So there would be, so we can say that it involves the strategic planning, and implement strategic implementation, and also evaluation. And as we all know, all these three levels of activities would be performed by three levels of management, and also the lower level, the employees of the organization. Then as I said, that it involves all the levels. It involves a top level management, and top level management will be involved in what? They would basically be involved with the strategic issues, not the mundane day to day issues. They will be involved with the strategic issues, which can change the course of action, which can change the path on which the organization is moving. Then it also involves coping with uncertainty when we are talking of strategic issues. So strategic issues would mean what? One is the planned issue, the planned activities, and second would be the uncertainty. So since we all know the whole all the whole business environment at present, it works in a very dynamic, uncertain situation. So based on the dynamism, the organization should would require to manage, would require to plan the at the corporate level in such a way so that they are able to cope with the uncertain future with certain planning, that is with suitable interventions. So those interventions could be either they could be long term interventions, or they could be short term interventions, and short term interventions mostly would be the course correction. Then, based on the plans at various levels, obviously, we would have strategic plans, which would be the responsibility of the top level management. Then we have the functional plans, which would be the responsibility of the middle level management. Then we have the operational plans, which would be the responsibility of the operation level employees. And then we have the organizational plans, which could be the plans of the strategic business units within the corporate body. Now let's go on to study the scope. The scope of corporate management, the scope is very, very wide. Naturally, we're talking of not one strategic business unit. We are not talking of one small company. Here, we are talking of a whole set of companies which are within the corporate body. So the scope is very, very wide, and it covers large area of a large array of activities or areas and or functions. As we all know, obviously, to begin with, begin with the discussion of scope, it includes the corporate planning, implementation, evaluation, and control. That is the first area of scope. Then the scope is that the top management, it is within the scope of the organization. So top management will play a very important role in corporate governance. That also falls within the scope of corporate management. Then the code of conduct in the organization, the code of conduct in the corporate body, that also falls under the corporate management scope of the corporate management. And when we talk of code of conduct, we are talking of the controls, we are talking of the evaluation processes, we are talking of the governance, we are talking of the necessary checks, that is the audits need not be the financial audits. We are also talking of the human resource audit or checks and controls at every level, at every functional level. So that also comes under the scope of, see, when we're talking of scope, that means the areas which come within the purview of corporate management. So when we say corporate management, obviously every little activity, all nitty-gritties of management in the corporate body, all that would fall under the scope of corporate management. All these dimensions would be covered under the scope of corporate management. Then also the kind of external changes happening, the kind of internal changes happening, the dynamism, as I said, the challenges, the competition from the external environment. Then let's say the socio-economic changes, the cultural changes, the financial changes, the change in the market, the change in the industry. All this forms the competitive scenario. So the competitive scenario would also obviously be part of the scope of corporate management. Then the market structure, the externalities that I told just now, the external forces that impinge on the activities of the corporate body, the external forces also, that also comes under the scope. So corporate management basically is a very, very open and dynamic area, open and dynamic function, which the organization has to continuously study, analyze, develop, formulate strategies, and implement them so that they survive, and not only survive, so that they are successful in the industry, so that they are able to cope with the challenges, they are able to cope with the sudden changes. So the scope of the corporate management, as you can see now, as you can realize, is very, very vast. Then also the strategic enablers. When we're talking of enablers, we're not talking of the routine operational enablers, we're talking of the strategic enablers. That is those factors which would facilitate, which would act as catalysts, but at the same time they are strategic, because they have the capacity of making or destroying or breaking the organization. So strategic enablers, like for example, changes in information technology. We have to imbibe the changes, we have to adopt those changes, and not only that, we could be instrumental, we could innovate those changes. Okay, so IT, knowledge management, research and development, innovations. The more innovative an organization is, the better it is for the organization, and it will be kind of, the more innovative it will be able to develop better kind of products. It will be able to offer better kind of services to the customers, to its to other companies, to its own clients, and thus it will have a better competitive edge. It will have an advantage over the other companies, other organizations in the industry. So it is very necessary that as a part of corporate management, we remain alert, and we also continuously try to strive to manage the knowledge, we strive to gain better knowledge, we try to remain updated, we try to even enhance the knowledge of our employees, so that we can manage these changes, the dynamism in the domestic as well as in the global environment. Then a scope of within the scope of corporate management also lies its social responsibility, its responsibility towards the people, towards the public, towards the society. So CSR, corporate social responsibility, and philanthropic activities which are being undertaken by the corporate body, by the big companies, that also falls within the scope of corporate management. Okay, now we move to the first part of corporate management, that is corporate planning. And what is corporate planning? As you all know, planning is basically it involves activities, formulation of plan for achievement of organizational objectives, and it is basically formulation of plans with assessment of the available resources towards what? Towards achievement of organizational objectives. Similarly, that is for a that could be at the operational level. Such kind of plan, when we define, could be for a small company, but here we are talking of corporate planning, so we are talking of comprehensive process. So this planning process will not be for a small, let's say, strategic business, for the individual strategic business units. It will not be for a functional unit. It will not be for an operational unit. It will be planning for the entire organization, for the entire corporate body. So it is comprehensive. All the planning would include all operational level plans of all the units of all the smaller companies within the corporate body. So it will be a very comprehensive process. Everything comes under its purview, involving continued formulation of objectives. It is continued. It is, as we discussed just now, that it involves short term and long term activities that is within the purview of corporate management. So that's why we can say that it is a continued formulation of objectives. It's just not that once we formulate the objectives at the very beginning, at the very, let's say, at the very outset, or when the organization has be is set up. No, it is a continued formulation of objectives depending on the performance of the organization, depending on the external challenges which the organization has to face, and then managing these activities, formulation and then implementation. So, implementation and controlling these activities, managing these activities towards what? Achievement of objectives. That is basically what is corporate planning. And since we're talking of corporate planning, so it is continuously being managed by the top management. Of course, people of the top people in at the top level, they would be taking help of the lower level levels also, at the lower strata also, but it will be basically managed mainly by the corporate uh, corporate heads of the organization, that is the top level management. Now, the famous management thinker Peter Drucker, he has also defined corporate planning as a continuous process. As we have already told, as I was telling you, that it is a continued process, it is a continuous process. It has a beginning, but it has no end. It is endless. It will continuously keep on. We will the people, the top level management will continuously strive towards improving, towards getting better and better and better over a period of time. Therefore, it is a continuous process of making entrepreneurial decisions with best possible knowledge of future. So that's what, see, we are futuristic. The organization has to be futuristic. So in order to be futuristic, the it is expected that the top management has the best possible knowledge. See, we cannot have absolute knowledge of the future, but still, with the analysis of the present scenario, with the analysis of how the organization is moving, the analysis of how the industry is moving, with the analysis of the various other companies which are present in the industry, how they are performing. Based on that, we at the top level management, we can get the best possible knowledge, and accordingly we take our entrepreneurial decisions and do what? Organize the efforts needed to implement the activities, measuring the results against the expected results. So this is like, we set the top level management sets the standard, and based on the standards, once the corporate plan is implemented, the results, the outcomes are measured, and they are compared with the expected outcomes. And how do we do that? With the help of control, evaluation and control. Result of evaluation and control would be the continuous feedback that we get, and then again we do strategic thinking process. We take decisions, we make the changes, and we carry on. So it is a kind of, corporate planning is a cyclical process. It has a beginning, but it has no end. It is a continuous process. With the changes in the environment, it will keep on changing. With the changes, with the dynamism, our organization also needs to be dynamic. Okay, what is the process? Now we go to the next topic: process of corporate planning, formulation of strategic intent. That is the first step. The corporate planning process starts with the formulation of strategic intent. That is the strategic formulation of the strategic plan. That is, and to break it down further, it's just not the plan. First of all, the organization, suppose if the organization is planning to diversify, So, first of all, that intention to move from the course A to course B, or move from path A or track A to track B, that intention should be there. So, first step of corporate planning is to define, to identify, to realize that strategic intent. Second is environmental appraisal. Now we have, now let's see, the organization decides that we need to diversify. And in the diversification process, we we have to we have to see how is the environment. Now environment, we are talking internal as well as external environment. So if we plan to diversify, if we have the intention to diversify, then how is the present scenario, how is the internal environment? Do we have the resources? Do we have the capabilities? Do we have the competencies? Do we have the finances? Do we have the necessary technology? So that will be part of your internal appraisal, and then we will see our external environment. We will try to appraise the external environment. Once we know that this is how our, let's say, our the industry is performing, we see that industry is very profitable, the companies in the industry, they are performing very well. So if we diversify, we will also be, it is expected that we'll also be able to perform better. We will also have better gains, better profits, provided we provide some kind of unique product or service. Then that becomes, basically, that is the result of the environmental appraisal. Then based on the appraisal, the third step is generation of strategic alternatives, that is developing of various alternatives. We generate various alternatives, evaluate those alternatives. Fourth step, evaluate those alternatives in terms of our capabilities, whether we try to see whether these alternatives, which alternative will be most suited for our organization, which alternative would be most suited, which would help us in achieving our organizational objectives. Then we take the decision towards development of corporate strategy, development of corporate policy, development of corporate plans, programs. So this is basically a part of the step of the steps involved in process of corporate planning. So once the result of corporate planning is what? A clearly defined course of action, clearly defined, well spelled out plan. Then that plan, this is done by whom? This is done by the top level management, and that plan then is communicated to the lower levels, and then the lower levels, or let's say the functional managers or the functional heads, then communicate it to the operational heads, and then the operational heads communicate it to the employees, and then it gets implemented. So that is the process of corporate planning. Now we move to, now this is a big exercise. And why does an organization, why does a corporate body, why does a corporate entity need to do this? What are the benefits? What are the advantages? What are the merits of corporate planning? Well, since it involves a detailed planning process, it is very comprehensive, it is a very vast activity. Obviously, the result of this would be that all the resources in the of the organization, in the organization, they will be properly allocated. See, without a plan, we know it all, everything becomes haphazard, and everything becomes, it's not like exactly haphazard. Without an adequate plan, whether it is at the corporate level, or it is at the company level, or it is at a very micro level, even at our homes, if we don't have an adequate plan, if we don't have a proper plan, or if we try to function without a plan, the resources, even if we have the resources cannot be or optimally utilized. So in order to ensure optimum utilization of resources, we need to have corporate planning. So one of the benefits of corporate planning is that with the help of proper plan, we are able to allocate the resources and thus reduce wastage. Better coordination between strategic business units, because corporate planning is all comprehensive. So naturally, once the plan is ready, once the plan is in place, the strategic business units within the corporate body, they know what they're required to do, and they also know what what they're going to share with the other units. They also know what they are going to get from the other units. Suppose there is forward integration, or there is a kind of, the strategy is backward integration. So each unit, let's say there is a unit which is manufacturing the raw material, and this raw material then goes to the unit B, which uses this raw material to manufacture a particular product. So when there is an all-encompassing corporate plan, there will be obviously better coordination between the strategic business units. There'll be, once there is better coordination, once there is proper allocation of resources, once there is reduced wastage, obviously there will be improvement in performance, because A will know what B is doing, B will know what C is doing, and there'll be adequate coordination and communication. It also helps the management in responding to dynamic environmental changes, because everybody is working in sync. The efforts are all synchronized. So once the efforts are all synchronized, once the efforts are all coordinated, everybody knows what the objectives are, what is their contribution towards the achievement of these objectives. Naturally, they the organization will be able to better respond to the environmental changes, because as we saw, part of corporate planning is what it is: environmental appraisal. So since we are saying it's a continuous process, so we our eyes and ears are always open, all our senses are always open, we are continuously studying, we are continuously analyzing the changes that are happening. Naturally, we will be able to be we'll be able to respond to sudden situations or sudden changes in a much more better manner, will not be caught unaware. Better management of the organization with limited resources. Obviously, resources are not infinite. With finite resources, the organization, if things are better planned, obviously the organization would be able to achieve the organizational goals and objectives with uh, limited resources, or with the resources that it has. And as I said some time back, that there will be reduced wastage. Then, so it also, benefits of corporate planning is that it also allows, or it ensures systematic and critical review process. So, since we are continuously reviewing the activities in the organization, we are continuously reviewing the performance of the organization, of the employees. Then naturally, we are able to systematically review, because the activities are listed out, what we are required to do, that is listed out, what are the results that are expected, that is listed out. Naturally, once the whole chart is in place, we are able to systematically and review the process. Another, last but not the least, the advantage of corporate planning is it helps in forward thinking organizational approach. Okay, what are the prerequisites of corporate planning? So in order to have all these, in order to derive all these benefits, there should be certain prerequisites. First and foremost, prerequisite is the commitment, top level management commitment. The top management should be absolutely committed towards this process. If they are not, see, if they are committed, they will naturally, they set the example for the other employees, for the employees in the organization. So we need, for the success of corporate planning, total commitment and involvement of the corporate planning process at the top management commitment and involvement is required, because if they do something half-hearted, then obviously the people at the lower levels, at the other strata, they would also be not half-hearted, they would think that it's not important, this work is not important. That's why the top management themselves are not serious about it. But if they see that the top management, let's say the managing director, the chairman of the organization, the vice chairman, or whoever, the board of directors. So when they see that they are taking things so seriously, they are putting in a lot of efforts to develop a corporate plan, naturally then that they set an example for the employees in the organization. Then it also another prerequisite, another condition, precondition for the success of corporate planning is participation of all the people who are responsible for implementation and control. Now it is not possible that department A gets into it seriously, does all the work and performs and tries to implement, whereas the B has a half-hearted effort, or B does not actually work as per the plans. Do you think we'll be able to achieve the objectives? No, we'll not be able to achieve the objectives. Therefore, the top management should ensure adequate, not only adequate, I would use the word maximum participation, not optimum but maximum participation of all those employees who are involved in this process. Another prerequisite is continuous process for inculcating the environmental dynamism. Now we know the environment is dynamic, so our endeavor should be, our effort should be to make the system such a way, to mold the system in such a manner that we are able to continuously inculcate the environmental dynamism. We are continuously inculcate the changes that are occurring in the environment. That is again an essential prerequisite for corporate planning, because until unless we don't do continuous appraisal, environmental appraisal, the external environmental assessment, we don't know what is happening outside. So how do we develop the corporate plan? How do we try to incorporate the latest changes which are happening in the outside the organization? So until unless we don't keep ourselves open to those changes, we will not our plan will not succeed. So continuous process that involves inculcating the changes that are occurring in the external environment, that again is a essential prerequisite for corporate planning. And there should also be a proper understanding amongst the people of the organization. So adequate and timely communication to all the employees, to all the people about the the plans which are being developed by the top level management. We should not only communicate, but we should also ensure that there is an adequate understanding amongst the people towards the real purpose of the corporate plan. Until unless, see, the employees don't understand the actual purpose, the motive, the objective of the corporate plan, do you think the employees will be able to give their best? So we ourselves, when there is a work in front of us, there is a challenge in front of us, and until unless we are thoroughly not sure about what this work is going to lead to, until unless we are not clear about it, do you think we can dedicate ourselves 100%? We can devote our all our energy towards that change? No. So, likewise, in the organization also, it is the responsibility of the top level management to communicate the necessary information to the employees, so that they get involved, so that they also have a sense of belongingness towards the organization. They have clarity of thought. They know what the if we are doing this, if we are going to bring these changes, this is what is. Once they know, they have a clarity, then only they will be able to contribute, then only they will be motivated enough to contribute towards these changes. So these are the preconditions or prerequisites of corporate planning. Now implementation of corporate plan, uh, Next step is implementation, refers to action and doing. So now we have the corporate plan in place. What is the next step? The next step is to implement it. And now implementation is obviously doing. Who all are involved in this? Now, implementation obviously would involve the employees of all the levels of the organization. So once the corporate plan is in place, the top level management has done its work. It has communicated this to the lower level employees, let's say to the next level in the management. Next next activity is basically implementing it. It is doing it, and that's where all the employees would be involved. That's where motivation or 100% involvement of all the employees is required. Now, implementation obviously would involve analysis of various activities at the implementation level. So, what activities? Project implementation. It's a project for the company. So, the project implement and adequate analysis and study of the project that is required. Procedural implementation, that also needs that. If we are implementing the plan, so what all activities would be involved in implementing this plan, and how it would be performed, that is the procedure that will be. So procedural implementation. Then the resource allocation for implementing the plan, corporate plan. What resources would be required? Do you have those resources? If you don't, if the organization does not have these resources, from where it can get those resources, or can it develop those resources? So all this would be a part of the implementation process. Then structural implementation. Now the structure, let's say the hierarchy, the organizational structure, or let's say the organizational layout, the whole structure, is it sufficient? Does it suffice to implement the corporate plan? If it's yes, then we can move ahead with the implementation. If no, then we have to see whether this structure will require some changes. If some changes are required, then what are these changes? So it is a very, as I said at the very beginning of this session, corporate planning, corporate management is a very vast, wide area of activities for the organization. Then behavioral implementation. Now, if suppose the corporate implementation of corporate plan means, let's say, setting up a factory in some other city or some other country, now we have to see what what implications that would have on the existing employees. Will we require more employees? And if the present strength of the organization is sufficient to manage the changes, to manage the implementation process, then will it require delocation of our employees, dislocation from place A to place B? So, or will it require, let's say, employment of new people? And if it requires employment of new people, then there would be obviously group dynamics involved. We'll have to see whether this new set of people with fresh set of skills coming into the organization, whether after being inducted into the system, how well they are able to adjust with the existing strength, existing employees in the organization. So there could be some behavioral issues. We have to see that. Also functional implementation, that also needs to be analyzed. Now, what are the requirements for implementation of a corporate plan? Obviously, procedural framework, a detailed procedural framework, a detailed set of guidelines has to be developed in order to implement the plan. Then legal compliances. Another thing is, when we are trying to implement the corporate plan, we have to see in order to implement them, what are the what are the legal requirements that the organization has to fulfill. Like for example, like I mentioned here, the labor laws, Let's say we are trying to set up a unit, a factory in another country. So we have to see that in order to implement our plans in that country, plans of setting up a factory, setting up a manufacturing unit, so what are their environmental protection laws there, what are their labor laws. So country to country that will change. So all those things we have to see. So while we try to set up our manufacturing unit there, we have to see whether whether our setting up there, whether the plan that we have, whether that incorporates meeting these compliances, the trade practices of the country. If we are going into foreign collaborations, if we are going into collaboration with let's say expansion, and expansion is with the help of another collaboration with another company in another country. So that again would bring in a lot of changes. It would require compliances. We have to abide by those rules and regulations. So that is again, without abiding by those rules and regulations, we cannot implement our plan. So that is a basic, very important, necessary requirement for the implementation of corporate plan. Then directive principles of state policy. If it is in India, then we have to check the directive principles. We obviously, in any case, any kind of implementation should not violate uh, the rules of the land, the laws of the land. That should not be violated. Whose responsibility it is? Obviously, it is the responsibility of the company. It is the responsibility of the top management. They should see that by any kind of activities, any kind of operations, they at any stage of the implementation process, they are not liable to violate any kind of laws of the land. Licensing requirements, they have to fulfill the licensing requirements. Every country has got different or unique set of licensing requirements which the company has to fulfill in order to foray into that area. So these are the requirements, and these requirements have to be met while implementing the corporate plan. And naturally, the top management has to be aware of all these requirements. Now, strategic implementation includes what? Definition of, since we are talking of strategic implementation, we are talking of, as I said, corporate management obviously is the development of, or let's say formulation of strategies, long-term implications. So, definition of major tasks for implementation. That is one of the tasks, very important task of strategic implementation. Then classification of all these tasks into operational level tasks. Then division of, obviously with that, just the tasks, just setting out the task, just putting up the task or delineating the task is not enough. Obviously, then in that case, we also have to see who all is doing what, who all will be doing what, the responsibilities that we need to give, the delegation of authority for completing the task, for performing these activities. So that would also be part of the strategic implementation. Then coordination between, let's say, interdivisional coordination, or inter-unit coordination. That is also part of the implementation process. Design and administration of MIS, management information systems. How the information, we have to see, we have to design the information flow system. Design and implementation of, again, the control. As we know, strategic implementation, the next stage would be what? Evaluation. Strategic evaluation. We studied this, if you remember, in the process of corporate planning, evaluation. So now, and once it is implemented, I think I did it here, scope. Yeah, once it is implemented, then obviously implementation process is not complete without adequate control and evaluation. So we have to design this control mechanism also. Appraisal system, we have to design that appraisal system, because from there the much needed feedback is going to come, and accordingly then we'll have to we'll have to change or we'll have to reroute. So, as I said, it is a continuous process, but the system has to be in place. System not only for formulation, system for implementation, system for information flow, system for control, system for appraisal, system for also human resource development system also has to be in place. Behavioral management system also has to be in place. We see that by implementation of our strategies, there should not be any kind of unrest amongst the employees. So that system also has to be managed. So you see, strategic implementation or corporate plan implementation is basically a strategic process. It has vast, long lasting implications, good or bad. Obviously, the organization will strive towards having long lasting good implications, would never want bad implications. So, in order to prevent occurrence of any kind of bad implications, the organization has to keep on monitoring the activities, keep on appraising the activities, keep on seeing whether the organizational objectives are being achieved, but at the same time, the employees, the organization structure, the whole structural process, the framework is suited for achievement of these objectives. So it's just not that the top management would be responsible, would care for achievement of organizational objectives. It would also care for its satisfaction of the employees. Now, approaches to corporate management. Corporate management varies according to obviously the size of the organization, the environment, existing internal, external environment, the complexity of operations, what kind of activities have to be taken, how old is the organization, and obviously the top management values and ethos. There are four approaches to corporate management. The top down approach, wherein the top management, as the name shows, the top management decides everything and leaves it to the middle and the lower level management to implement it. Then there is a bottoms up approach, which is like it's an open door policy wherein the top management ensures participative management. It's a democratic decentralization wherein the top management would take feedback, would develop the policies, the corporate plan on the basis of the realities and complexities of operations. And how would it know about the realities? Obviously, it will know about the realities and complexities when it gets the feedback from bottom. Then the hybrid approach, which is a combination of the top and the bottoms up approach, and it is used basically whereas in a decentralized company wherein there is a vertical communication between the corporate heads and the various units, various companies existing within the corporate. Then the team approach, as it shows, team approach means that this approach of corporate management is uh, the whole let's say the top managements, the top managers, the functional heads, let's say the vice president finance, vice president marketing, vice president HR, or for that matter, let's say vice chairman product A, vice chairman product B, vice chairman product C, president strategic unit D. They would all communicate laterally, and accordingly they would give their inputs, and the chief executive, or let's say the chairman of the company or the board of directors, they will together develop the corporate plan. Now we move to the next unit, that is the corporate policy. At the end of this unit, you would be able to understand what is a corporate policy, determinants of corporate policy, the scope and need, why a corporate policy is required in the organization. Again, it's a process. So the steps involved in the formulation of corporate policy, then the various types of corporate policies and significance. What is the importance of corporate policy? Now we go to the features of corporate policy. So what is a corporate policy? It is basically, it can be defined as a general statement of principles for attainment of organizational objectives. Corporate policy formulation is basically aimed towards achievement of organizational objectives. And we're talking of corporate policy, again, it has It is in terms of long term implications, so it is a long term perspective. It uh, it helps in achievement of objectives. It is qualitative, conditional, and general statement. It is a guide for repeat. It is obviously, since it's a corporate policy, so it's a guide for repetitive operations. It is hierarchical. It helps in decision making. It is for mutual application. It brings unity to the structure. So the whole structure, as I we've also discussed earlier, the corporate policy brings unity in the organization, and it is a positive declaration. Process of policy formulation. Obviously, it begins with environmental. The first step is environmental analysis. Before we do formulate the policies, we try to see, assess the environment, and obviously the environment would be, analysis would be both internal environmental analysis and also the external environmental analysis. The, let's say, the legal and analysis, the socio-cultural environmental analysis, the political analysis, the, let's say, the financial analysis, the analysis of our competitors, the analysis of the industry. So all that will be part of your environmental analysis. Now, once we have had a thorough study of the environment, the next step would be identifying the policy alternatives, the various alternatives. Then third step would be evaluation of various alternatives. And finally, the fourth step would be selection of the most viable alternative, which will become the policy for the corporate body. Now, classification of corporate policies. Classification of corporate policies. See, the corporate policies, as such, basically based on the scope of activities, scope of operations, these are classified into three. We have the basic policies, then we have the general policies, and then we have the departmental policies. That is, policies catering to each department, catering to each unit. Or it could be policies pertaining to each strategic business unit. So, or it could be functional policies. So one strategic policy would be then divided into strategic business unit policies. Then strategic business unit policies would be divided into functional policies or operational policies. So as such, based on the scope of activities, based on the scope of operations of the organization, the policies, the corporate policies are divided into, are classified or divided into three types: basic, general, and departmental policies. Then, on the basis of expressions, um, these are divided. The corporate policies could be expressed or implied. So, expressed would be, or could be, again, oral corporate policy, or it could be written. See, mostly oral policy, corporate policy is like, is not really formalized. So corporate policy, we saw the implications of corporate policy. It has a far and wide reaching implications. So obviously the corporate policies are written policies, and then they're also implied. There are certain policies which are implied, which are oral, which are which are understood. Since we are here, we have to follow, let's say, the, as I said, we have to comply by the legal requirements. So those, the policies accordingly would be implied. Then the basis of levels of management. So the policies which are developed at the top level management, they would be top management policies. Then these top management policies would be communicated to the next level of management down below. So those, then again, based on those strategic top level management policies, the middle level management, they would be developing policies which would be fulfilling the requirements of the top management policies. So it's a kind of hierarchy of policies. Top management policies get communicated to the middle. According to that, in order to fulfill the requirements, in order to achieve those objectives, the middle management, they develop their policies. Then those policies are further, they percolate down to the lower level management. They then they at their level they will formulate policies, and then these policies they are communicated to the employees down below and for necessary implementation. So on the basis of levels of management, we have top management policies, middle management policies, and lower management policies. Similarly, on the basis of nature of origin, we have originated policies, appealed, imposed, directive. Then basis of functional areas, based on different functional areas in the organization, we have different kinds of policies. Then based on the nature of management, management involves planning, organizing, coordinating, controlling. So the policies which are involved in which are related to planning would be planning policies. Policies which are related to organizing would be organizing policies. Policies which are related to actuating would be actuating policies. Policies which are related to directing would be directing policies, and controlling, similarly controlling policies. Now, in the next session, we will discuss the importance of policy, and we will move on to study the block 2 of MMPC 017, Advanced Strategic Management, and block 2 would be pertaining to corporate level growth strategy. Um, and in corporate level growth strategy, we would be studying 3 units: intensive growth strategies. We will be studying the integration and diversification growth strategies, and we will also study the strategic alliances. Thank you so much, and look forward to seeing you in the next session. Namaskar.